you are probably not internally ready or even psychologically ready for another fat loss phase. What's up, King Cats? Welcome back to my channel. So today we're here for the start of a new series. We are here to gather some wisdom from the moss. Not really, but we are here for the new Ask M series, which is a series where I answer frequently asked questions from you guys, whether they are about fitness, whether they are about life, whatever they might be about. We're gonna do this little Ask M series. So we are starting off today with a fitness-based question. Well, if you are new here, what's up? My name is Emily. I am a nutrition and fitness coach. I have been a nutrition coach for over 4 years now. I was initially certified through the ISSN, which is the International Society of Sports Nutrition, in 2015. Graduated with my bachelor's degree in exercise science from the University of Louisville, and also have been certified through Precision Nutrition in nutrition. Go figure. But today we are here for the start of a new series called the Ask M series. So basically what we're going to talk about in the Ask M series, I'm assuming they're going to be mostly fitness related topics, but it's just questions that I get on a regular basis that I want to give you guys an answer to. So welcome to the new series. Very excited. Happy to have you. This video was inspired by the 5 fat loss myths video that I did around Christmas time, and I figured there was a pretty decent reception to that I would keep on doing stuff like this. So today we're here to talk about fat loss, and particularly, are you ready for a fat loss phase? Is your body and is your mind ready for a fat loss phase? So we're going to get into 5 things to have as your checklist, your toolbox to check off before you try and go into a fat loss phase or a calorie deficit. So without further ado, let's get into it. So let's keep in mind a couple of things and a couple of assumptions that we are going to make filming this video. So first of all, I'm going to assume that you are a relatively healthy body composition individual. Obviously that is subjective and it's going to look different for every single person in terms of a scale weight. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to assume you're around, via a DEXA scan, around 30% body fat or below. There's going to be some different nuances when it comes to individuals who might be overweight or obese. So that is a detailed scenario that I'm not going to talk about in today's video. We are assuming generally healthy, active populations, active people watching this video. Another assumption that we're gonna make is that there are no pre-existing known hormone issues like thyroid problems, PCOS, things like that. You are an otherwise healthy individual. So those are the 2 main assumptions we're gonna make in today's video. If more come up, I will be sure to let you know. But thing number 1 on our Are You Ready for a Fat Loss Phase checklist, this is what we're putting in the backpack. First thing, when was the last time you dieted? Or were in a fat loss phase, or were under eating food, whether intentionally or not. I think that's an important distinction, just because as a coach, 99% of the inquiries that I get come from people that are currently under eating and they want to go immediately into a fat loss phase, and I have to play the bad guy and say, well, you're already under eating, so it's a no-go from me, sister, but we're gonna make it happen in the future. But if you've been in a fat loss phase, bare minimum within the last 5 to 6 months, you are probably not internally ready or even psychologically ready for another fat loss phase. So for example, if you ended your last fat loss phase in January, you're probably not going to be ready to start another fat loss phase, given that you do everything perfectly right in your reverse diet until beginning of June. So that just allows for enough time for every down regulation that's happened. So your down regulations in metabolic rate, your down regulations in hormones, things like that, that are a natural and normal part of calorie restriction to come back up to normal. Now, that is a bare minimum time frame. Another rule of thumb we can use is however long you spent dieting, you spend that same amount of time away from dieting to, again, allow for all of those adaptations to adapt back in a more positive direction. The reason for this is if you spent a long time within a fat loss phase, all of those down regulations have happened, and if we don't give them time to upregulate again, your body's not going to be quite responsive. Your metabolic rate is still going to be a bit lowered, your hormone function is going to be a bit lowered, which will impact your metabolic rate. You're psychologically probably not ready, and overall your body just has not had enough time to recover from that previous period of calorie restriction. So you've got to give yourself enough time between dieting phases. I promise you, 8 weeks is not enough time. Not enough time. And also we got to keep in mind too, not just in terms of systemic upregulations, but if we're trying to pack on some good muscle tissue, you're not going to put on a significant amount of muscle mass without a significant amount of time spent with the nutrients available to do so. So keep that in mind. Point number 2, which kind of stems from point number 1, is where are your calories at currently? So this is a really hard thing to give a general recommendation on because enough calories is going to be different for every single person. A good general rule of thumb with that 5 to 6 month time frame minimum, you know, a lot of people in my opinion would benefit from not being in a fat loss phase for, you know, especially females, a year plus. But part of the point of having that time off is to get calories back up to a healthy level. So eating at maintenance or in a moderate surplus, depending on your goal and depending on your personal situation and your health status and all of that. But maintenance is going to be different for every single person, every single body, every single genetic makeup, every single activity level, every single lifestyle, all of those things. But the one general recommendation that I can give, and it's still a generalization at that, and again, this is where the caveat of we're assuming generally healthy body composition individuals, is if you're maintaining your body weight on 10 to 12 calories per pound of body weight per day or less, that is a pretty darn low calorie intake and you should not be starting a fat loss phase. So practical example of that, 130 pound female, you're moderately, you know, relatively lean by scientific standards, not by your own standards, keep that in mind. So that 30% body fat or below. So if you are a 130 pound female and you are maintaining your body weight on 1,300 to 1,560 calories per day or less, you're probably not ready for a fat loss phase because your starting baseline calorie intake is relatively low. And that's obviously just a body weight multiplier, but it can be a good starting point, especially for people that don't have a coach to guide their every move. If you're looking for a place to get to in terms of a body weight multiplier, you know, ideal case scenario, what I would like to see from someone is around 14 to 15 calories per pound of body weight per day as a maintenance level before I put them in a fat loss phase. And again, every single person is going to be so different, especially with that upper limit, because everyone's maintenance point is going to be very different and everyone's healthy maintenance point is different. But if you are again, healthy body composition individual and you are consuming 10 to 12 calories per pound of body weight or less and you are maintaining your body weight there, you are probably not ready for a fat loss phase. And part of the consideration there too is the fact that in order to create a calorie deficit, you have to pull food down or increase expenditure. So if you're consuming 1,300 calories a day, well, now to further the deficit, you got to go down to, you know, 1,100, 1,000, 900, and that's not good for you at all. So I would rather have someone spend a few months working food up so that way we have a healthy starting point and we also have a larger calorie pool to pull from when we go to try and create the deficit. They're gonna have a much more responsive system and we're gonna have more room to play and we're also not gonna have to go to as many extremes. And we're assuming that we want this fat loss to be sustainable, right? You wanna be able to do this in a way that doesn't drive you absolutely batshit crazy. You want to be able to maintain a good bit of your progress after you're finished with your fat loss phase, those kind of things. So we're going for sustainable, healthy weight loss here, fat loss here, not just extreme, see the scale go down quick kind of fat loss. So next point, number 3, how is your overall biofeedback? And what I mean by biofeedback is a fancy word that we as coaches use for what is your body saying to you symptomatically. So a couple things to look for. Your soreness levels. Are you constantly sore? If you're constantly sore, like every single session, every single day for prolonged periods of time, that's usually a good indicator that your recovery is not where it should be from your training sessions, whether it's because you're underfed, whether it's because you're doing too much volume, whatever it is, there's something going on there where you are under recovered, and that's not a good scenario with which to put yourself in a more under recovered state, which is exactly what a fat loss phase is. When we decrease food, we are now decreasing one of our body's primary forms of recovery from things like resistance training. So you don't want to be in an already under recovered state and go into a deeper, more under recovered state, if that makes sense. 2, are you sleeping well? Are you sleeping consistently? Or is your sleep very erratic, very interrupted, inconsistent, those kind of things? That's another one of our big hitters in terms of our primary sources of recovery. I would argue that sleep and proper nutrition are 2 of our biggest. So if we have poor sleep patterns, whether that's because you've not spent enough time out of a dieting phase too long, whether it's your lifestyle, whatever it is, that's a variable that we could optimize before we try and put you in a fat loss phase. And that's a variable that when it's not optimized, I as a coach a lot of times see interfering with the success of a fat loss phase. Another one for us ladies, and we're gonna make another assumption here that you are not taking something like a hormonal contraceptive that would alter your natural menstrual cycle. But if you are a female who is not using any kind of, whether it's hormonal or non-hormonal contraceptive device, whether it's the pill, whether it's an IUD, whether it's an arm implant, whatever it is, if you're not using any of those things, so you are not using any kind of exogenous hormones, or if it's a copper IUD, a spermicide, but you are not having a regular period, that is a sign that internally something is off, whether it's hormonally, whether it's an accumulated stress response from physical, emotional, mental stressors, whatever it is. That's a sign from your body that, hey, something's not right, and there's a reason I'm not functioning the way that a female body functions optimally. So maybe we don't put me in a further stress state, because lack of a menstrual cycle in a lot of cases, and again, not every single scenario, but in a lot of cases, a lack of a menstrual cycle is a sign of systemic stress on some level. If we're not having a regular, consistent menstrual cycle, I would probably not put you in a fat loss phase. Another one to take into consideration is digestion. So if you are constantly bloated, gassy, constipated, having constant diarrhea, things like that, if there's some kind of digestive issue going on, then we should probably not be starting a fat loss phase. Reason being here, for one, that's a sign of some kind of thing not going right? So if there's a pre-existing symptom that you've not addressed, it's probably not a good idea to put your body in under the stresses of a fat loss phase. So something as fundamental as digestion is really important. So a lot of times if someone has been dieting for far too long, we'll see them, be really gassy, really bloated, have just a lot of reactions to normal foods, and that's something that we need to take care of before we try and put them in a dieting phase again. And just in general, if your digestion isn't on point, that says that, hey, we're not assimilating and utilizing the nutrients that we're taking in an optimal fashion, which is not good for us. So we gotta fix that as well. And then last thing is caffeine intake. So if you are abusing caffeine, and if we're gonna put a number on it, what's seen as a healthy upper limit for adults in terms of caffeine intake is around 400 milligrams per day. If you are slamming a lot more caffeine than that, and you are stressing out your adrenal glands, and you are just overall overstimulating your body with stimulants, it's probably not a good idea for you to go into a fat loss phase, and I would recommend trying to spend some time titrating caffeine intake down to a healthier level. But caffeine abuse in general is very stressful on the body, it's stressful on the adrenals, it's stressful on your nervous system. So if you are continually abusing caffeine, we should probably work on that before going into a fat loss phase. All right, number 4. So number 4, where are your current stress levels at, and where do you predict they are going to be within the next few months? The reason I bring this up is, for one, dieting is an inherently stressful thing. So if we think of things from a survival aspect, our bodies feel most calm and at peace and happy when we are well fed, when we are adequately fed. So if we go and put someone within a fat loss phase or a calorie deficit, we are now signaling the body, whether intentionally or not. So in the case of our ancestors, if there was a famine, that wasn't intentional, but our bodies don't know the difference between a famine and like, hey, I want to lose 10 pounds just because I want to. They don't know the difference. So that's an inherent stressor. The body senses energy deprivation, and it's like, bro, what the fuck? Like, what's going on? It doesn't know that it's voluntary. So that is an additional stress placed on your body and on your system. So bodies can only handle so much of what's called an allostatic load, or your stress load. And everyone's tolerance for stress is going to be very different. But generally speaking, and a lot of this is anecdotal coming from coaching, I don't know how many studies there are done directly on stress levels in a person's life and fat loss. Like, nobody cares. Nobody cares to do research on that. Like, people want to research how to cure cancer, not how to lose body fat. And this is what I see in practice as a coach, and what I've seen in practice as an individual, is people that have higher levels of daily stress, whether it's their job, whether it's their relationships, whether it's their home life, whatever it is. People with higher levels of stress, or like college students, a lot of college students are really bad about this. If they are in a very high stress period of life, their progress within a fat loss phase, or even within building phases, tends to be slowed and suboptimal compared to people that are either better at managing their stress, or they just have lower baseline levels of stress in their day-to-day life. So obviously none of us can avoid stress. It's a part of our daily lives, unfortunately, but you have to be able to think big picture and also think forward. So let's say you are about to move across the country and start a new job and completely start your life over. While you might be able to successfully carry out a fat loss phase, that also might not be the best time to plan for one, just because you've got a lot of other external stressors coming in, which is taxing on your system, but also is probably going to make it harder for you to adhere to a fat loss diet. So it's a lot easier to eat higher calories and stay within those calorie ranges than it is to maintain a deficit. And also, just if your attention is divided a bunch of other places, you're probably not going to give a fat loss phase the attention it needs or deserves in order to keep moving forward. So from a combination of just overall systemic stress along with your likeliness to be adherent, doing a fat loss phase in the middle of a very high stress period of your life is probably not going to be the most lucrative path. What I would suggest to most people if they're about to enter a really high stress season of life is like, hey, go into a maintenance phase for a little bit. Wait until your life is going to be a bit more calm and your body and your whole being is in a bit more of an optimal position to lose body fat. Wait till then. Do so at a time when it's going to be the most enjoyable for you, the healthiest for you, and just the least amount of additional stress on your life. So take all of your lifestyle factors into account. If it's gonna be a super busy or stressful season, maybe delay that fat loss phase a few months until you know things are gonna have calmed down a little bit. And number 5, one of the most important ones, where's your mind at? Where's your head? How's your head doing? So a couple of things that I see as a coach and that I have learned in practice as an individual, as a competitor in bodybuilding. One thing that I look for in people is, hey, can you have reasonable, whether it's untracked meals, or can you go on vacation and not track your food and not have it be some giant free-for-all Last Supper mentality situation? Generally speaking, can you have untracked meals, untracked days, and have them be reasonable? Part of what this lets me know is, one, your mentality around food is generally pretty healthy. You don't view food as an all or nothing thing. You don't view food from like this scarcity perspective where, oh my God, I have to eat everything in sight because I can never eat this again, but I have to eat it all right now because that's right in front of me. That to me is psychologically not healthy, and to a point could be something that we refer out to a psychiatric professional, because that could start to fall into the category of disordered eating. But also from a hunger regulation perspective, what that lets me know, if someone can reasonably just pay attention to their hunger and satiety signals, even when they don't have concrete numbers to hit, that lets me know, hey, your hunger and satiety signals are relatively balanced, which at the very end of a fat loss phase, or if you're not recovered from a fat loss phase, they're probably not very balanced, because that takes time to level back out after you've gone through a period of losing body fat. Because when you're done with a fat loss phase, your body is sending all the signals hormonally, psychologically, physically to go eat food, because it's sensed a period of energy deprivation. So when we see those hunger and satiety signals and the behaviors that follow and the eating patterns that follow start to level out, that's one piece of biofeedback, like we talked about earlier, that, hey, things are kind of normal again. And you know, we're starting to see just overall normal function, normal hunger regulation, things like that. That's a positive thing, both mentally and physically, as a piece of feedback. Another thing to keep in mind is within a fat loss phase, you need to be mentally ready to be adherent. So if you are just in a place in life where you're like, I really don't want to, you know, track things a bunch and like all that stuff, then like maybe just don't go into a fat loss phase. You know, obviously there's people that have successfully lost body fat without tracking a single thing, but the way that I coach, I do use a macros based flexible dieting perspective where we do keep tabs on energy balance. So it is important that somebody's adherent to their fat loss program in order to continue to see progress. So if you're just in a place where you really aren't 100% there, where you're like kind of wishy-washy with tracking things and you're like, not really about it, probably not the best time to enter a fat loss phase, because you do need a certain level of adherence to have a successful fat loss phase, especially if you are trying to do something like get on a bodybuilding stage, for example. There's a high level of adherence required with that. And then last thing is with the mental side is kind of your motivations. So are you dieting from a place of self-hatred, or because you've made some poor dietary choices and you're mad at yourself and you're going to now guilt yourself into a fat loss phase? Neither of those are conducive places to start a fat loss phase from. With the first one, I am more so a fan of being motivated for change from a place of love for yourself, wanting to challenge yourself, wanting to push yourself to be at your physical best in terms of performance, body composition, whatever your goal is, and not from a place of, oh my God, I hate how I look, I have to fix this, because you don't. You absolutely don't. So seeing where someone's psychological motivations are around why they want to enter a fat loss phase is really important to me as a coach. And then if it is just a matter of, let's take, for example, this happens a lot, the competitor that they end their season and then they go hog wild on food for a few weeks. They're up, 15, 20 pounds, which does happen to some people within a couple of weeks. And they're like, oh my God, I have to undo this. I need to go back into a diet. Not the time. Part of why it's not the time is because, one, it's not gonna fix anything. But two, if you just came off of a dieting phase, while you might have gained weight and body fat from chronic overfeeding, which is a thing, you didn't get the metabolic payoff that you get from a structured upward titration of calories, which is what we're trying to do within a reverse diet. So if it's only been a couple of weeks and you've packed on a lot within that short time frame, unfortunately, you've probably not gotten much metabolic rate payoff for the weight gain that you've experienced. So we can't just hop back into a dieting phase and expect it to undo what's been done, because your metabolic rate is pretty much still right where it was when you ended your dieting phase. So you kind of gotta accept it and work with it. So if we're gonna quickly run through our 5 points of, are you ready for a fat loss phase? 1, when was the last time you dieted? If it's been within the last 5 to 6 months, then you are probably not internally or psychologically ready to enter another fat loss phase. 2, where are your calories currently at? This is both a relationship between your calorie intake and your calorie expenditure. We didn't touch on the cardio aspect of it a ton, but keep that in mind. So if you were eating 10 to 12 calories per pound of body weight or less and you were maintaining your body weight on that, probably not a good idea. But if you've worked your way up to 14, 15 calories per pound of body weight or more, and you've maintained that for a few solid months, then you might be in a good spot to do so. Number 3, how is your biofeedback? Are you getting good quality sleep? Is your digestion on point? Are you having a regular menstrual cycle? If you're a female that should be having a regular menstrual cycle, overall, you're not abusing caffeine or stimulants or things like that. Overall, you're in a well-rested, high-performing state. Good to go. If one of those variables is off, figure out what's going on, reassess. Number 4, where are your current stress levels at in your life and what do you predict they will be in the next few months, which is when you would be carrying out that fat loss phase. If it's gonna be a really high stress season of your life, probably not the best time. But if you're predicting that you're gonna be relatively low stress for the next few months and all of these other things are in check, then it could be a good just time to enter that fat loss phase. And last thing, number 5, where is your head at? What are your motivations for dieting? Are you trying to undo anything that you've done that you might not be the most proud of? Are you able to listen to hunger and satiety cues? Do you have an overall balanced view around food? Are you able to take breaks from tracking? Things like that. So how is your overall psychological relationship with food, with dieting, all of those things? So I hope this video was helpful for you guys. If it was, please give it a big thumbs up. Leave a comment below something that you learned in this video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click that little notification bell so you never miss an upload. And that is it for me today. I love you so much. I'll see you in the next one.